Well, I guess I'll start with this here. There's a nifty transition I had in mind for this. Come on. But this is just a nice little beginner's guide for everyone to get acquainted with the series, kind of talk about different iterations and stuff. Good old time. Now this is primarily a presentation to introduce the Mega Man series to new audiences, where we will cover what the franchise is about and how it appeals to fans, a brief history of the series, and how you can play it today. Now, what is Mega Man? It is a 37-year spanning franchise of action platformers developed by Capcom with the unique trait of allowing players to select a pre-established stage in any order. Each boss at the end of a stage has an ability that you gain that another is weak to, which provides plenty of replayability from attempting stages in various orders. Debuted as Rakumen in Japan, with rock coming from artist Keiji Inafune's love of music references, and the man is more of an honorific rather than being specifically gendered, so anyone can enjoy the game. The platformer gameplay is the primary focus of the series, but later releases add more story elements or even implement different gameplay styles entirely. And this is kind of an example of a stage selection screen that you might encounter here. Now, where I started with it was Mega Man 10 back on the PlayStation 3 in 2013, and obviously I've been loving it ever since. The varied approaches of progressing through the 8 stage select bosses stages, as well as when to use their ability, keeps me coming back to these admittedly simple platformers, and of course the satisfaction of learning the patterns for different bosses. Now, before we cover the actual games that Mega Man is known for, here are some other places you might have seen him in. First is the Ruby Spears animated series, released in 1994. This was the first animated series for the Blue Bomber that was intended for animated audiences. Whether you know it for the incredible Super Fighting Robot theme song, or all the memes spawning from the absurdity of certain episodes, this ridiculous series is worth noting as a place for people who got into the character. Now there's also the Archie Comics line. I don't know if this is obscure or not, but starting in 2010, Archie Comics made a series featuring him that took what was established in the games and spun it into a compelling narrative. Written by Ian Flynn of Sonic the Hedgehog fame, this series ran for 55 issues and even had some crossovers with Sonic. Now, unfortunately, this series is out of print, but all of the issues of it are available somewhere on the Internet Archive. And well, speaking of that intro, I'll just play it right now here so I can, if it cooperates with me, and it's not going to, yay! So, we won't get to see that.
That's a shame because it's a bot.
Okay, it's not moot. Okay, it's a problem with the slideshow itself. Hold on a moment. The Wi-Fi here's a bit faulty, so okay, it's working. So I don't know what's going on here. There's also supposed to be music that played on each slide, so I don't know what's going on here. Anyway, we're gonna miss that, I guess. Come on. Now, of course, it might be intimidating for new fans to get into the series with how many different games he has in his library, not to mention the multitude of spin-offs. Luckily, I have a timeline here where I break down all the major iterations of the character to their basic components, so you all can pick whichever series sounds most appealing to you. With that out of the way, let's talk about the origins of the character. So he debuted in 1987 on the Nintendo Entertainment System with a platformer from Capcom called Rakumen. It was changed to Mega Man over here in the US because the original name was deemed too cutesy for American audiences, but Kirby was completely fine. The story follows helper robot Rock selflessly choosing to be upgraded by Dr. Light into the fighting robot Mega Man to combat a nefarious scheme from Dr. Wily using his fellow robot masters to conquer the world. He's equipped with his trusty Mega Buster to copy his fellow robot masters' abilities, as well as fire small plasma-based projectiles. With character art and direction by Keiji Inafune and game design by Akira Kitamura and Nobuyuki Matsushima, the first Mega Man game was created with a unique system in which players could choose any stage with a Robot Master boss they wanted. There was a specific order, of course, given how each one was weak to another's ability, but players could experiment and slightly change their runs up to Wily's Fortress. And this is the original design of him for the first game right here. There was a video here of me demonstrating a fight with Cutman, but of course, because of our Good pal, the Wi-Fi connection not cooperating with me. I'm afraid we're gonna have to cut that. Puns. Come on. Okay, so despite decent reviews, the first Mega Man was not a financial success for Capcom, leading them potentially pulling the plug on the entire series. However, during their spare time working on other games, plenty of the original development team worked on a successor in the form of Mega Man 2, and this sequel would forever change the course of the franchise. The entire game was a passion project by the devs, and their efforts paid off, and it was a massive financial hit, paving the way for a whopping 4 more classic games on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Even the bosses of these later entries were passion projects, as all of the Robot Master bosses from Mega Man 2 through 8 were winners of contests where fans submitted their very own designs, like Brightman here from Mega Man 4. Over here. And of course, after the success of Mega Man 2, Capcom went all in on the series and decided to make Mega Man 3 through 6 all releasing on the Nintendo Entertainment System. While maintaining the gameplay that fans were used to, these entries helped flesh out the world with new characters and ideas, such as the mysterious Proto-Man and Mega Man's trusted companion Rush, who could be used to help avoid obstacles during gameplay. The slide maneuver and Charge Buster were also added in Mega Man 3 and 4 respectively, adding more gameplay options. This original run of the series on the NES wrapped up its initial run in Mega Man 6 in 1994, only being released in the US and Japan, but Capcom's Mega Man team was hard at work on their successor to the classic series, releasing on upgraded hardware of 16-bit consoles. And here, of course, is where I would be demonstrating the slide and charge shot, but again, Wi-Fi! Okay. Now, before we talk about the 16-bit entries, it's important to bring up the series running alongside the NES titles, the Mega Man World series on the original Game Boy. Now, it's not called that here, it just shared the same title as it did with the NES entries. Starting in 1991 and ending in 1994, this library of 5 games mostly contained Game Boy titles recycling content from previous console adventures, aside from a few new bosses, but the Mega Man World 5 entry was its own unique title with an exclusive story. This one sends him on a wild space adventure to take on the Star Droids, the alien robots with unique abilities, and figure out where in the world they came from. The cartridges for these are unfortunately very hard to find now, so your best bet at playing these is through Nintendo Switch Online. With that out of the way, let's move on to the 16-bit era for the character, and probably the one that most people know him from. So, with 16-bit hardware on the rise, with the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, KJ Inafune and other development members were hard at work on a Mega Man for new hardware. Mega Man X was the culmination of their efforts, a faster, sleeker Mega Man with level design based on exploration and more of an emphasis on story. Set 100 years after Rock squabbles with Dr. Wily, this series follows X and his Maverick Hunter buddy Zero as they take on the regime of the evil Sigma, their former leader, who was hard set on creating a world only for Reploids. Now, Reploids are more advanced machines with the ability of having free will, rather than being designed for a specific purpose like the Robot Masters of old. So, Cutman couldn't start working in a doctor's office because he's only meant to cut down trees. Plenty of ethical debates of robotics here between sessions of blowing stuff up. Classic Mega Man also made a comeback with Mega Man 7, which adopted many of the gameplay improvements from X for a faster and more enjoyable experience. But of course, 1995 is when 3D consoles started to show up with the PlayStation, which helped open the door to 3D gaming, and everyone was jumping on that to use those polygons that look a bit dated today. But Capcom decided to just take what worked with them in previous entries for their X games and regular series and upscaled them with Mega Man 8 and X4. These two added improved visuals to the mix as well as fully animated cutscenes with voice acting of varying quality. Zero was also fully playable for the first time in X4. He uses close quarter swordplay with his Z-Saber built more around movement. Eventually, we did get 3D Mega Man in the form of the Mega Man Legends series, which took place several years after the X games. Now here's where I would have put one of the cutscenes, but again, Wi-Fi! So I'll just bring out my favorite part from these cutscenes. Now where is Dr. Wily? That's a good question. Mega Man Legends, which debuted in 1997 on the Sony PlayStation and Nintendo 64. This one brought some 3D action-adventure gameplay, kind of like Majora's Mask with it, for the Mega Man series. 2 mainline games and a spin-off were made. This one set several centuries after the X series, featuring Mega Man Walnut and the Casket family searching for ancient ruins for power sources known as quantum refractors, while constantly running into issues with air pirates with the same power sources. You'll probably run into the Bone family pretty frequently. You'd mostly know for trombone. It's a trombone pun. There was a Legends 3 planned for the Nintendo 3DS, but it was canceled, leaving the series on a cliffhanger in its story since 2000. Mega Man X also attempted to wrap up its story with X5 on the same platform, as Keiji Inafune went to go work on a spin-off about Zero, but Capcom decided to make the infamous and practically unfinished Mega Man X6, causing Inafune to alter his original plans for Mega Man Zero. Now, speaking of Mega Man Zero, Inti Creates joined Capcom with this entry to lean into more RPG-esque territory with the Mega Man Zero series. Debuting on the Game Boy Advance in 2002, this series followed a reawoken Zero team up with a resistance of humans and machines amidst a war on energy, as Reploids are being hunted down for it due to a worldwide energy shortage crisis. These entries in particular are very story-heavy, as well as the ultimate challenge for Mega fans who have mastered the original and X series. These are very painful. Please make sure you've played other games before getting into these. But of course, the most popular games of the era, for general audiences anyway, were collection RPGs like Pokemon. So how would Capcom keep up with that? With Mega Man Battle Network, of course. Debuting in 2001, a year before Mega Man Zero, the Mega Man Battle Network series debuted on the Game Boy Advance as a response to that. With 6 main entries across the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS, this tactical RPG stars 5th grader Lan Hikari and his NetNavi, digital avatar in a sense, Mega Man EXE, as they team up to stop an evil crime syndicate from taking over the world, as well as engaging with fellow Navi users. To do this, they would collect various battle chips to help augment Mega Man's abilities, much like acquiring different types of party members to flesh out your team. Players could trade various battle chips to exclusive to certain versions of the game, kind of like with how they're exclusive Pokemon to different titles, as well as battle each other via link cable to experience their opponent's unique combination of battle chips to win net battles. Now, meanwhile, on home consoles, we kind of got the short end of the stick over there. The only major releases on this generation of consoles were Mega Man X7 and X8, exclusively on PS2, which all underperformed compared to previous entries. X7 was poorly received by critics for its clunky 3D gameplay and is still seen as one of the worst Mega Man entries to date. X8 tried to change things up by going back to its 2D roots, but it still sold poorly. But there was a little bit of a light there. There were compilations of older titles for the first time, as PlayStation 2 and GameCube fans could experience the entirety of the Classic and X library at the time of the anniversary, thanks to the Anniversary Collection and X Collection, respectively. There were also some spin-off titles for X and Battle Network on the same consoles. Now, I just found out about this with the Anniversary Collection, but the Anniversary Collection has the Japan-exclusive PS1 remasters with CD quality music in them. I did not know that until now. Now, despite how bombastic the early 2000s were with the Mega Man franchise, the sheer amount of Mega Man on the market caused sales and new releases to decline. Even with the return of the acclaimed playstyle of the Mega Man Zero series and the new ZX titles were not enough, as the series was canceled after the second entry due to poor sales. Despite poor sales, the series was still praised as critics, as well as providing a female playable character for the first time in the form of Ale over here. This series focused on humanoids Ale or Vent obtaining artifacts known as biometals, armor resembling heroes of eras past, to defeat the rising amount of incidents involving rogue robots in an era when humans and machines finally coexist with each other. Only took them 400 years, but they finally did it. They can mega merge with these biometals to don new abilities and playstyles. Outside of the ZX titles and a collection of the Zero titles on the DS, there is still plenty of content, Mega Man content, to go around on the platform. Battle Network wrapped up its run on the DS with its 5th and 6th entries, as well as the successor of Battle Network made its debut in 2007, Mega Man Star Force. This series maintains the tactical gameplay and collectibles Battle Network was known for, while telling a new story about 5th grader GeoStellar reluctantly teaming up with alien Omegasys as they face alien threats from Omegasys' home planet, as well as solve the mystery of Geo's missing father. It can utilize changes in EM waves to combine with Omegasys to form the Star Force Mega Man. Now, after all this and mixed results from the Nintendo DS endeavors, they partnered with Inti Creates again to bring back classic Mega Man in the form of Mega Man 9 and 10 on digital console storefronts. These went all the way back to the series' NES 8-bit roots to help stir the rising nostalgia for that era. Sadly, the mobility developments like the charge shot and slide were removed to be more in line with the first 2 games. Despite these technical setbacks, the bosses in both games had a lot of charm put into them, from the UFO-inspired Galaxy Man to the powerhouse of Commando Man and even our first female Robot Master boss in the form of Splash Woman. All of their abilities had just as much charm and character as their designs. Unfortunately, Mega Man as a whole would go on hiatus for 8 years with Mega Man 10, as both a wide array of canceled projects and departure of KJ and Inafune left the Mega Man devs unsure of where to go next. But then in 2018, 8 years after Mega Man 10, Mega Man 11 arrived on store shelves after a long wait for any new content for fans, and it quickly became the most financially successful title in the entire franchise, which was previously held by Mega Man 2. This entry was unique for having a 2.5D style with stylized models, as well as plenty of difficulty modes to boot. The charge slot and slide were returned in Mega Man's moveset, I don't know why they took these away, as well as a new ability that the whole game is built upon, the double gear system. Based on a design used by Dr. Wily in his latest Conquest, this allows Mega Man to temporarily enhance movement speed and precision with the speed gear, or amplify the power of attacks with the power gear. These don't last very long, of course, so players are encouraged to determine when usage is necessary. However, the bosses can use your own tools against you, as every boss in the game uses one of the gears their own way to make them stronger, like Blockman here. Despite the positive reception of 11, of course, there hasn't been a new game since 2018 outside of compilations via the Legacy collections. Now in 2024, it's been 6 years since Mega Man 11's release, and no real word from Capcom other than the potential of remasters of the first 3 NES games in a recent poll they hosted. But I also found out that the main director of 11 also left the company, so I guess it's just in free fall right now. But there's plenty of hope for the blue guy. Outside of all of his games, there's plenty of indie devs making stuff inspired by the franchise as well. Of course, while Mega Man took a sharp decline in releases in the 2010s and 2020s, plenty of fans and even former developers put their own titles inspired by Mega Man out into the world. Now, these are not every single game inspired by him that's out there, but these are some of the most notable ones I could find. There's Gravity Circuit by Domesticated Ant Games, which released last year. It's heavily inspired by the Mega Man X series and stars Kai, a lone operative war hero on an adventure in a futuristic world inhabited by sentient robots. Probably the most notable one here is 20XX by Battery Stable Games, which is also inspired by the X series, combined with some roguelite elements in there. Despite it mostly being a challenge route all on one life, this one does in fact have multiplayer. Though probably the most infamous one here is Mighty No. 9 by Concept and Inti Creates. You'd think that an indie game with everybody who helped revolutionize the character would turn out good. It did not. Sadly, it just became a lesser Mega Man from the people who helped master it with Mega Man 9 and 10 a few years earlier. Probably skip this one unless it's on sale for super cheap. But Inti Creates did make Azure Striker Gunvolt just a year before Mighty No. 9, which heavily took from their work on Mega Man 0 and ZX, which is also praised a bit more than Mighty No. 9. Now, where should you start playing with all these games I brought up here? Now is by far the best time to get into this series. The accessibility is at an all-time high. Almost every game you can think of is available on modern hardware thanks to the Legacy Collections and Mega Man 11's wide distribution, except Legends and Star Force. But most of what he's known for is there. Now for some personal recommendations, I would say 100% start with one of the classic Legacy Collections. The accessibility, like save states and rewind provided, makes it worthwhile. These are super cheap when they're on sale or used. I think I just saw it for the Steam sale for like $7 or something. It's also worth noting that you can jump into any classic entry regardless of number, since they're not very story heavy, so you can start with 2, 7, or 11 and still enjoy everything. 11's the most recent entry with lots of difficulty options available, and it's designed for modern hardware. If you're up for a faster gameplay and story, pick up the X collections. If you like Battle Network, you can give that a shot if you like RPGs. All of these Legacy collections are available on modern hardware: Steam, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. So to conclude this here, does anyone have any questions? No questions? All right, well, that's actually going to wrap up what I had planned here.